High gravity, crushing pressure, an atmosphere that eats metal for breakfast, and seismic instability that shakes the very ground you stand on. Add in weather systems that can tear a ship apart and apex predators in every corner of the planet. This world seemed to despise life itself. So, when the Galactic Council evaluated this small blue-green marble, their conclusion was simple. No intelligent species could possibly evolve here. It was a death world, plain and simple. Then, the radio signal started. At first, the Varelian scouts thought it was just background noise, maybe interference from the planet's constant, violent storms. But the signals weren't random. They repeated. Patterns emerged. Language, mathematics, art. A sentient species wasn't just surviving on this hellish planet. They were thriving, broadcasting their existence out into the void. The Council's decision was swift and unanimous. A civilization forged in such a brutal crucible couldn't be allowed to expand. They were too dangerous, too unpredictable. The order was given: immediate subjugation. 3 rotations later, the Varelian expansion fleet arrived, blotting out the stars above the death world they called Earth. On the ground, humanity looked up. Telescopes and satellites captured the impossible shapes hanging in their sky. Panic exploded across the globe, but then something remarkable happened. The fear sharpened into focus, into a unified purpose. Governments activated long-forgotten emergency protocols. Militaries synchronized their defenses. Scientists were rushed into fortified bunkers and given a single daunting task: solve the impossible. A message was sent, a simple, clear transmission into the cold of space. Unidentified vessels in orbit, this is humanity. State your intentions. The Varelians didn't bother with a reply. They deployed their drones. The first wave descended in a perfect, gleaming formation of advanced alloy and directed energy. They were designed for swift, overwhelming conquest. But they never reached the surface. Earth's oxygen-rich atmosphere, a life-giver for humanity, was a corrosive poison to the drones' overheated shields. The air itself became a weapon. Moisture seeped into microfractures, and the planet's ever-present storms did the rest. Lightning, nature's own artillery, speared through the conductive hulls. One by one, the drones failed, streaking across the sky like a shower of man-made meteors. Aboard the Varelian flagship, Commander Threx watched the telemetry feeds in stunned disbelief. "Why is their atmosphere chemically aggressive?" he demanded. His engineers scrambled. Adjustments were made. The second wave launched with reinforced shielding and new environmental buffers. This time they made it to the ground. They expected to find terrified, primitive prey. They found humans. They were compact, dense bodies built for crushing gravity. Their muscles were like coiled steel, their bones hardened by constant strain. In an environment that made the elite Varelian soldiers feel sluggish and heavy, the humans moved with terrifying speed and agility. Their primitive projectile weapons bullets, they called them, cracked through the air with lethal force, shattering the Varelians' advanced exoskeletons. Human artillery used the planet's intense gravity to devastating effect, launching shells in high, brutal arcs that plunged down with precision. The Varelians were masters of adaptation, but the planet itself adapted faster. Sudden downpours flooded their deployment zones, turning the ground into a thick, sucking mud that clogged their servomotors. Native microorganisms, invisible and insidious, slipped past the seals in their armor. Swarms of local insects, drawn to the energy signatures, shorted out exposed circuitry. And then there were the animals. Domesticated predators, once apex hunters of their own domains, now fought alongside their human companions with a fearless loyalty that defied all logic, lunging at isolated Varelian units. Earth wasn't just a battlefield. It was a hostile, active participant in the war. Within 48 hours, Varelian casualty projections had soared past all acceptable limits. And yet, the humans kept coming. They ran directly into plasma fire to drag their wounded back to safety. They scavenged and reverse-engineered captured alien technology with astonishing speed, improvising countermeasures on the fly. Battlefield feeds showed them laughing in trenches as explosions rocked the horizon. Why do they display joy during combat? A bewildered analyst asked. Commander Threx had no answer. Then, on the 5th day, the impossible happened again. A Varelian dropship, grounded in a contested zone, suddenly lifted off. It was under human control. Against all odds, they had deciphered its complex propulsion systems. The ship clawed its way into orbit, battered but functional. It weaved through defensive fire with clumsy but effective maneuvers and docked with one of the Varelian cruisers. High Council security footage later showed 3 humans stepping onto the bridge. They were clad in a mismatch of their own gear and salvaged Varelian armor, their weapons lowered but ready. One of them, a woman, looked directly at a sensor cluster and smiled. A hastily configured translator crackled to life. "We need to talk," she said. "They didn't slaughter the crew. They didn't try to sabotage the ship's reactor. They gave a demonstration." In a single compartment, the life support flickered off, then back on. A controlled systems override. A simple, undeniable proof of their capability. A moment later, a new transmission reached every Varelian vessel. "We don't want your worlds," the human representative's voice said, calm and steady. "We don't want your resources. But if you attempt to conquer ours, we will respond. We have calculated the trajectories for every sizable asteroid in our system. With your drive cores, we can turn them into relativistic projectiles." The message was followed by a data stream. Grim, mathematically precise simulations of extinction-level events. An absolute silence fell on the command decks of the Varelian fleet. The Council reconvened. They reviewed every piece of data the battlefield reports. The environmental analysis, the updated psychological profiles of this impossible species. Their final assessment was unanimous. Earth was still a death world. But the classification needed a critical amendment. The native species wasn't just surviving despite the planet's lethality. They were shaped by it. Forged by high gravity, hardened by storms, tempered by predators, disease, and the planet's own tectonic fury. They were cooperative to a fault within their own ranks, and fiercely, terrifyingly territorial against any outside threat. Their ability to adapt was so fast it bordered on reckless. The order was given: withdraw. The great Varelian ships disengaged from orbit and vanished back into the black. Human forces on the ground tracked their departure, but they didn't pursue. Weeks later, a single ship returned, broadcasting universal symbols of peace. This time, humanity's answer was different. "Welcome to Earth. Let's try that again." Commander Threx, now Ambassador Threx, stood on a balcony overlooking a human city during his first official visit. A storm was rolling in. Thunder cracked overhead, and lightning split the sky. Rain fell in relentless sheets. Below, the humans just lived. They walked through it all as if it were nothing. Vehicles moved, lights gleamed, and the sound of laughter echoed up from the streets. Threx turned to the human ambassador beside him, the same woman from the ship. "How did your species survive on this world?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine awe. The human watched the magnificent, violent storm with a look of quiet pride. "We didn't survive it," she said. Another bolt of lightning lit up the skyline, brilliant and fierce. "We're what survived." Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tales from the far reaches of imagination. See you next time.